Just a moment.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, thank you. No problem. As a reiteration is that these questions from our cable partners will allow you 2.5 to 3 minutes for each one of these responses. Again, the first one is from Feeding Northeast Florida. How is improving nutrition, education, and access to fresh fruits and vegetables considered in any plans to improve healthcare and infrastructure? And what is your plan for improving transportation in lower income zip codes that provides easy stops at grocery stores and fresh food markets? It's a lot, so we're going to break this up a little bit. So let's start with the first half of this question. How is improving nutrition, education, and access to fresh fruits and vegetables considered in any plans to improve healthcare and infrastructure?
Would you like me to start?
Yes, please.
All right. So one of the things, I have a 3-pillar plan for Jacksonville, and the second pillar in my campaign is healthcare. We have the best healthcare in the country in this city, and we have the worst health outcomes in the state. I don't know if you know that. Our infant mortality rate, our maternal mortality rate are dismal. Our primary care numbers are dismal, and a lot of the reason for that is poor access, and that has to do with access to nutrition as well as healthcare services. So one of the things that I am going to do, and I have a 4-part plan, it's all on the website if you want to read it, is I'm going to bring in a chief healthcare officer because our governor decided, before this governor, the governor before, decided we were going to centralize all of our healthcare to Tallahassee, our public health. And that's been a big problem. We've lost tens of millions of dollars. So what we're going to do is we're going to bring down a lot of federal and state grant money that we leave on the table right now. We literally leave hundreds of millions of dollars of grants on the table because, for political reasons, didn't like who's in the White House, don't want to, we don't need federal money. Well, that's our tax dollars. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put those tax dollars to work in food deserts, with programs for existing stores in some of our neighborhoods. I've had some great conversations with some of those folks that what we can do is we can incentivize various stores in our neighborhoods to carry things like fresh vegetables, fresh fruit. These are not impossible things to conquer if we will simply do that. And then we have, and it's already been 3 minutes, goodness. And then we have also the opportunity for a lot of these empty lots we have around our city to sort of create some opportunities within our nonprofits to address some of those issues with those as well. But it literally comes down to political will. That's it. This is not an unsolvable problem. If we want to solve it, there are the funds available to solve it, and there is the will available to solve it from me. We just have not had people in office that have any intention or desire to solve those issues.
Thank you.
So I was raised by a healthcare professional. My mother, Dr. Lois Gibson, taught many of the nurses in this town. She was also a nutritionist. She had nutrition products when she retired as the Dean of Health Programs at FSCJ North Campus. So I grew up at the knee, understanding how important healthcare is and being healthy is and how to take care of oneself. I want to add that I'm also very tenacious and very driven. I think that is important in a leader who cares about their community. I believe that we have an opportunity to create more community gardens too. So in open spaces, we can definitely do that and engage the community in that area, the neighborhood in that community, to be participatory. That creates unity, and it also grows the food, some of the vegetables that they need, fresh vegetables that they need in their own homes. I've seen this done on rooftops in Chicago, Seattle, because I've traveled a lot for conferences, and out of this country. And so that's how we bring community together and deliver nutritional items. Actually, in the legislature, we passed a bill that was very, it was controversial and it should not have been, and that is having gardens in your own yard, in the front yard. And some people didn't like that, but guess what? It feeds the family and it delivers fresh vegetables for everyone. So when you talk about grocery stores, guess what? There's a lot of food deserts, particularly on the north side. And the grocery stores are not going to come without some more economic development. That means making sure we infill, add rooftops. My brother told me this. Rooftops and income is what drives grocery stores and other businesses into the community. So I believe in small business development in those neighborhoods. I believe we should incentivize that. We incentivize big corporations. We need to incentivize homegrown businesses that create economic development and keep the cash within the community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Like this, coming last, they've taken all my points.
They're your own though.
But, and I agree, there's nothing that's been said that I disagree with. I believe that it would be the job of council to make sure that they reach out to make sure that we engage different food industries, corporate companies to bring into these areas. And at that time, you know, as Audrey said, that rooftops and income actually do drive whether or not businesses come to an area. But as it relates to food, my thing is this: it doesn't matter whether it's an EBT card or a Benjamin, it's money. And if there are people present, they need to eat. So I don't think it's fair when they talk about, well, you know, the income level, they're eating, and you need to be able to supply the food. That's the way that I see that. And I think that my job as mayor will be to help identify those areas, those companies, and encourage them, offer incentives to be able to help make sure that those fruits and vegetables are on the shelves in those areas. I agree with the community gardens. I think that's an excellent idea. I believe that I've seen some that have progressed really well, and I think that, you know, leadership is supposed to inspire. My job will be to inspire people to continue to do the things that we already have set in place, like some of the community gardens, and duplicate those, and then to inspire those companies to come here to provide what we need for them. Are we going to talk about the healthcare part now, or just the food? Is my time up?
Yes, sir.
My time is up. Okay.
All right, we're ready to begin. Thank you. All right, so we'll go to our next question. Our second question is from the 7 Women Against Gun Violence, and we will start, we will actually start with Audrey Gibson on this one. From the 7 Women Against Gun Violence, do you have any policies or changes planned to address domestic violence in our city?
Within the policies that I do have planned that include domestic violence, and I want to make sure that we also understand that sometimes a part of homelessness is the result of domestic violence. And so I've been very engaged in this issue and actually passed legislation that gives victims of domestic violence the opportunity to collect unemployment compensation. So I understand that issue, and I will certainly address this issue in a similar manner so that we have homes available. And let us not forget that it's not always women, it's largely women who are the victims of domestic violence, but there are some men who are also victims of domestic violence as well. And so within our sheltering neighborhoods, within infill, helping to alleviate homelessness, that issue can be addressed in a policy. More the policy, let's remember, is more about the city councils. The mayor actually can support and raise their voice for or against those things that they don't think benefit the community. And so it's an area that I have been engaged in already, and will certainly be included in any recommendations to the council of policy that I think would be more protective of those who are the victims of domestic violence.
As mayor, my duties would be to be the voice to and for the people. To the people, where I actually share with them the information that is vital to the situations facing us. And for them, as I speak to other agencies on behalf of the people of Jacksonville, to make sure that I can bring to our communities what's necessary. And speaking for, I would make sure that that the city offers assistance to the, like Hubbard House and other agencies that are nonprofits that are providing protection and housing and whatever other services they are able to provide, but make sure that we give them more funds so that they can do more for the domestic violence in our city. Domestic violence, unfortunately, is not always reported. And it's difficult to figure out who needs help sometimes and who doesn't. And again, as a leader, my job will be to inspire. So in talking to the people on a regular basis, taking public service announcements to make people aware, a lot of times people don't take advantage of situations or provision that's made for them by the city because they don't know. So as taking advantage of public service announcements, I can make the people in Jacksonville aware and that these things and services are available to them and offer them protection and anonymity as they come forward to take advantage of these different services that are available. I am a former battered wife. I understand, in my youth, I understand the issues. I understand the fear. I understand how you continue to think it's going to get better if this will be the last time. It won't happen again, but it does. And I think that I can help talk to the women, particularly in Jacksonville, and help them to understand that you have to help yourself and then make sure that we have something available to help them.
Thank you. Thank you.
Are wonderful nonprofits in this city. I think one of the things that I want to see us do more of is create more partnerships with those nonprofits. I come from the nonprofit world. You have to be very innovative, you have to be very passionate, and you have to be somebody who knows how to move a bunch of pieces around the table to make a nonprofit work, because it's a very difficult job, and especially the nonprofits we have involved in this work. Whether it's Hubbard House, whether it is the Dolores Bar Weaver Policy Center, there are so many nonprofits that have done amazing work in this arena. And one of the things that, in talking so much with the folks that run the Dolores Bar Weaver Center, so many of the women that end up in jail, that end up having a problem with law enforcement, is because they were victims of domestic violence, and somehow they ended up on the street, and then they were arrested, and basically they were made the bad guy in this whole situation. They end up in jail. So we have to continue to support these organizations that are doing the work of making sure that we support these women and give them an opportunity as opposed to vilifying them. It's very, very important that these women don't end up on the streets or in jail, and I think the best thing we can do on that front is to continue to support organizations and with city policies that will help us to create a safer space for them so that they don't get stuck in a system that ends up dominoing for them.
Thank you. Thank you. To our third question, and we will begin with Dr. Allen on this one. Thank you very much for passing that down. From the Jacksonville Community Action Committee. Given that at least 11 major cities in Florida have some sort of civilian police oversight board, would you support the implementation of a public safety oversight committee in Jacksonville that could review and make recommendations on previous JSO investigations and policies as well as current ones?
I'm I was a part of the trial group that started the police service technicians in St. Petersburg, Florida in 19 blank blank. And so I recognize that the need for civilian participation in the decision-making processes. I don't believe that civilians have enough training, however, to make some decisions, but as citizens, we know what it feels like. We know what's happening. We know we can be objective in making decisions and reviewing information. While we may not have law enforcement background, we do have common sense, and I think that's needed in doing and making those determinations. Looking at, I think that the citizens are intelligent, and we can look at evidence and be objective. They ask us to do it all the time on juries. Why not? when we're dealing with police investigations. So yes, indeed.
Thank you. And so I've done a lot of research on police oversight boards or commissions, and what some data from the U.S. Department of Justice. But even before that, I talked to several people, including pastors, about how this can come about. We don't have to have an ordinance to create a police oversight board. I believe that the board or commission or whatever name we want to call it should rise up from the community, because I don't want to have a board that consists of political appointees, which I think taints the entire process. So from the community, even today, you can all decide that you want to create an oversight board. As a 501c4, C3 with a C3 arm, potentially. The mayor's office can provide staffing for such an entity within the budget to make sure there's someone maybe that takes the notes or give you guys back the information that you put together. But the rising up of such an entity can absolutely come from the community, and you can still request the documents that you would need to review. What happens in the end is you still make recommendations to the sheriff. Ultimately, the decision of discipline or release of employment is up to the sheriff. But absolutely, today, you all can sit here and request any police reports that you want to review, and make recommendations on specific action. And I encourage us to do it that way. Someone can be the convener. Maybe one of your nonprofit organizations can be a convener, and you all decide among yourselves what that board is going to look like and who's going to be on it, what subcommittees you're going to have, and you still send those recommendations forward to the sheriff. And so I absolutely believe in the creation of such an entity, and you still get to request all the documents you want to review as members of this community, because first of all, it's public records. Thank you.
In short, my answer is yes. I do believe that we need some sort of a civilian review board, and I would be in favor of actually creating that by ordinance, because I think that it's important that we actually have some accountability there. I think that, when I met with the Fraternal Order of Police when they were doing their endorsement process, after telling them that I would be a good partner to law enforcement, and that I knew they were already going to endorse somebody else, I said, look, I want you to understand that I want the same things you want. I want a safer city. But the only way we get to a safer city is if we bring more people into the communication process. We haven't done a very good job of that. And so I'm not suggesting that this be a board that has some sort of ability to prosecute or have that part of the process take place in a civilian review board. But I do believe we have got to have some sort of a civilian review board that helps to hold our police officers accountable and creates more conversation that we're not having right now. I don't think we can have a safer community unless we have more accountability within the community. And I think, look, being a police officer is a very tough job. It's a very dangerous job, and I get that. But it's also the truth that our police officers would have a safer scenario, and so would our community members, if there was more communication and more accountability. So I told them then, and I'll say that to you now, that I believe a way forward on that is a police review board. However that looks. I know there is a lot of concern on that side of having that, because they think that folks that are not police officers can't possibly understand how dangerous the job is. I think people understand how dangerous the job is. I think they also understand how dangerous it can be for folks on the other side at some points in time. So I think it's just a way to have better communication and to create more understanding. And I would be absolutely in favor of it.
We'll continue with the fourth question, and this is from the League of Women Voters, Jacksonville First Coast. So, Ms. Deegan, we are seeing overreach by the state legislature and governor on the ability of local municipalities to make decisions that are best for their citizens. Sorry. Can you tell us where you stand on home rule? And I can repeat that if you like.
Oh my gosh, I can't imagine anything that is more important to this city than home rule. It's actually in our charter. Home rule is in our charter. And yet, year after year, you see it happen over and over again. Y'all, I hope you're paying attention to this, because this is a really big deal. Whether it comes from what we can do as far as our educational process, how we're allowed to deal with climate and fossil fuels, whether it's our gun violence issues, they are passing more and more laws in the legislature every year that take away our ability to do things locally. Do you know now we're really not allowed to do anything locally to influence our gun laws locally? That is crazy to me. We should have the ability, and that is how this city is set up specifically to have home rule. So I push back against that every time I have an opportunity, and I think it's going to be very, very important to have leadership in the city of Jacksonville, in our strong mayor system, to have a mayor who stands up for home rule. Right now we have folks who basically just say, sure, you know, whatever you want, that's fine. We cannot have that, or we're going to completely lose the ability to legislate for ourselves. I find it very interesting how we hear over and over again from certain folks, I want smaller government. I want smaller government. Well, you know what small government is? It's local government. You know what isn't small government? Having the state government and the federal government tell you how to live your life all the time. So we should absolutely, with as much pushback as we can give, say we will not allow our local rule to be usurped in Tallahassee. And I know that our Duval delegation has tried everything they can for that, but this is something that folks have got to pay attention to, because we're losing the ability to govern in our own city.
In my opinion, is a very important issue. As I said, my doctorate is in public administration with a focus on municipal government, particularly participation and participatory government, where the citizens actually have a say-so in how the decisions are made that govern our lives. Well, for the people and by the people is the way this country was designed to function. And if you take that away from us, then what do we have? And not only are they overreaching from Tallahassee on this issue, they're overreaching on education, and if they get away with one, they'll get away with another, and before you know it, we don't have any right to say anything about anything. We won't be able to go to the bathroom without permission. And that's insane. We have got to have control. I will look deeper into our charter. I've read our charter as well, and I know that it's in our charter that we're supposed to be able to govern ourselves. And I would be talking to all of our legislators to encourage them to do what's right and allow the people to govern themselves. For the people, by the people is not just a line from an old historical document. It's what we are supposed to do. We are supposed to self-govern. So I believe in home rule 100%.
So I have a little bit of background in this issue. It's just this year they're bringing back the same bill that they had in the legislature last session. But let me tell you what's driving it and how you can probably be more active on the other side. Yes, the legislature, the body votes up or down on a piece of legislation, right? But it's that whole home rule issue is really emanating in the bill that they're dealing with again that we killed last year has a lot to do with zoning and impact on what the city does or how they regulate a business in their own city. That's being driven by people, organizations like the builders and other business-oriented, the chambers, business-oriented entities like that. So to fight against the issue, you have to understand who the players are. It's not just the legislators that we need to talk to. We need to also talk to the chambers. And as mayor, I've had dealings with as a senator, I've had dealings with the legislature, and I know them all pretty much very well. And I also have had conversations and meetings with the chamber. And so I'm in a position as mayor to be able to talk to those entities about continuing to make sure that our home rule is protected in every city and county across this state. And so it's important that you all reach out too. Send your letters to the chambers and those business organizations that are behind pushing or taking away home rule so they can do whatever they want to do with their business in your community. That's how we fight. Don't just leave it to the folks. Trust me, I've been there a number of years and worked with many of them, gotten a lot of things done positively for this city, but on the other side, fought against really bad policy that impacts my constituency in the city of Jacksonville.
Okay, thank you, and you may actually keep that mic. Okay. We're going to the fifth question, and this is from the Jacksonville Democratic Socialists of America. Would you support a tenants' bill of rights? Do you have any policy to lower rent costs in Jacksonville?
I don't have a policy to lower rent costs in Jacksonville. I think that certainly is something that we need to be able to control. And back to the home rule issue. But the way I think we should deal with it is, to me, it's an emergency situation now where the rent is escalating. I believe that we should at least, and city council should, at least look at a temporary moratorium on rent increases. Not that it will never, until it levels off. We're not in an emergency situation. And so I do believe in a tenants bill, right? I have that on one or two of my other questionnaires. And I also believe in, under my mayorship, I would contract or put out to bid to law firm the right to have a contract with the city to go into court and help those tenants who are being evicted. I think that's very important. And so instead of trying to send one of our constituents to a different firm and a different firm and a different firm, I believe that we, as a city, we can contract with one firm that also keeps the cost low, so we can continue to have that entity engaged, and then as tenants have issues, then they would be the entity that would take on the case, if you will, to help the tenant with their particular rights. Also, I've talked to some of the apartment association about it when we had our interview, and told them that absolutely, when rental assistance and down payment assistance I can do, but I would want to make sure that there is not continual turnover of kicking people out of their place, taking advantage of the city dollars that would be given for those payment assistance and rental assistance by continuing to evict people, and then it's a scam. So thank you. I think I got everything out.
Thank you so much. Okay, Ms. Deegan, would you support a tenants' bill of rights? Do you have any policy to lower rent costs in Jacksonville?
Yeah, I would absolutely support a tenants' bill of rights. I think that people deserve to be notified if their rent is going to go up. I think there should be a certain period of time during which you wouldn't be able to raise rent until people had an opportunity to react to that. There are all sorts of things in a current bill of rights that I've seen put out there that I think would be good. Unfortunately, there are some things, again, because of what they've done in Tallahassee, that we are not allowed to do. I mean, we can't even discuss any sort of rent control because that's been made virtually impossible in Tallahassee. Gainesville tried to do that, and it was immediately shot down. So it's one of those things that we have to use the levers that we have, and I think that we have to take a look at a lot of these folks that are coming in from out of town to buy up property, and then they jack up the rents. There are a lot of cities that have actually outlawed that. I don't think we can outlaw it here, but I think that we might look at something like if you're gonna come in and buy up places, you have to have a homestead here. I think there are ways that we can look at that. I think we need more infill for affordable housing. I think that's really important too. If we have more places for people to live, then the prices are going to come down. I think we need to look at all these empty lots that we have in Jacksonville and see what we can do in terms of turning those over to philanthropic organizations or incentivizing builders to build some affordable housing. And I've said repeatedly that if we're going to give incentives to any builders, they need to include affordable housing in the housing that they are building. I think that we need to have folks of all walks living in these buildings all over the downtown and all over our neighborhoods if we're going to incentivize. So I think those are ways that we can look at bringing some of those costs down, and I would be for a tenant's bill of rights.
Thank you. Thank you. And we'll finish up that question with Dr. Allen.
I believe that a tenant bill of rights is necessary, and it's, as I said at the very beginning, equity is what I'm all about. I've been a tenant, and I've been a landlord, and I know that they both need protection. They both need direction. The only thing that we can actually do, and that I can actually do as mayor, look at the property taxes as it relates to rental property for landlords, because when the property taxes go up exponentially as they have, I mean, homeowners, you know it's already gone up, they're going to pass that cost onto the renters. But I believe that we do have to have some guidelines as to when you can do that. You can't just, let me know that next month my rent's going to increase by $400 or $500. I hear people tell me things like that, and I'm like, are you kidding me? So those things have to be, we have to address that somehow. I don't know if we can do this. This is my plan. I'd have to get legal counsel on it. All of these out-of-towners who come in and swoop up all the land, increase the rent. I would like to have a cap on how many properties someone who does not live here can acquire. There's one company that has 5,000 properties here in Jacksonville. They have a monopoly on the rental market, and they drive the prices up. Then they go in and put lipstick on a monkey and call it, renovated, and they haven't done anything. You walk into, I'm a general contractor by trade, so I know I can drive by and look at it and tell whether or not they've actually done anything, or they just, dress up the pig and call it, something else. But that's not what you're supposed to do. So I agree that there should be a tenant bill of rights. I believe that we should have somehow we've got to come up with, and probably using some of the suggestions that Audrey made, with making sure that we get involved and talk to the chamber, the people who are driving all of these things, and get them and our the people that we send to office. Look, all politics are local. We have to be concerned about who we put into office, so that when we put them into office, we can go back to them and say, look, this is what concerns us, and you need to do this, because they are supposed to be there doing the will of the people. And until we hold people's feet to the fire and hold them accountable, we're not going to get anything that benefits us. So I'd like to see something happen that we can get the tenant bill of rights that covers those things that concern the tenants most. Renovations, making sure that you take care of issues when they arise and not when you get ready. And making sure that, and like I said, I can't leave the landlords out, but we need to separate the local landlords from the long distance landlords, and there needs to be something done about that. And then of course I would look into if there's anything we can do with the taxes.
Dr. Allen, if you're elected mayor, how will you invest in communities that have been historically neglected and underserved, like those in Northwest Jacksonville, to revitalize these areas?
I believe that the taxes, and I alluded to it earlier, the taxes in a particular area need not go into a general fund which becomes a slush fund and you can just dispense it all over the city. Taxes in your area need to remain in your area to address the issues in your area. My job is to make sure that happens, and then to identify, there are dollars that have come down from DC that are available. Jacksonville, past administrations have systematically refused to go after dollars that would help all of us. I will be seeking the dollars that are available to Jacksonville, with the state and the federal funding sources, bring those dollars home, make sure that I use those along with the tax revenue from your area to address that area. North Jacksonville is first on my list, and I don't unapologetically say so. It has been underserved forever, and it's time for that foolishness to stop. And yes, I will make sure that I will look at the city in such a way that I'll start with the most underserved, using those dollars in that area. The next year, and I'll take a major issue in that area based on what the citizens have told me needs to happen. We will work on that in that year. The next year, we'll take the second worst area and work on that. And at the end of a 4-year term, I will have solved 4 major problems throughout the city. We have not had a mayor thus far to have done that. So I have a plan to make sure that we not only deal with North Jacksonville, but especially North Jacksonville.
I grew up on the north side, as I talked about earlier, and I know what it looked like when I was growing up, and then I know what portions look like today. And so you have to understand that much of the north side, and there are some other communities like it, East Arlington and some parts of south side and west side as well, where they were built pretty much in the same time frame in some of the older neighborhoods, but there was segregation. So in certain areas, those more successful, I would say, African Americans moved in certain communities. And as they became more successful and other communities got built, they moved out. And there was never any other new development or newer rehabilitation done in some of those communities. And so I believe that East Arlington, as well as Northwest Jacks and some of Southside, suffer from the same neglect. The difference is the northwest part of Jacksonville was promised in consolidation that things would be the same because those neighborhoods were flourishing. Those neighborhoods were flourishing on their own. Consolidation pulled them in and then let them fail. So I believe in small business development in those communities will help drive economic development, as well as business ownership, putting those in those communities, particularly our younger people, into jobs and job training in the neighborhood. The ownership should be locally owned, so that the money turns over in that particular community over and over and over again to revitalize the area. I also believe in the budget. As mayor, I will look at bundling projects. I believe we can do redevelopment faster and less cost to taxpayers if we bundle projects in similarly situated communities. So when I talk about similarly situated, if you ever have an opportunity, drive through East Arlington, drive through Northwest Jackson, drive through some of the South Side, where African Americans live in particular, and you will see the similarities. The roads are crumbling because they were built at the same time. There's no sidewalks. There's ditches that need to be covered. All of those things exist simultaneously. Then we should be able, as mayor, I will make sure that contracting happens where 2 or 3 of those properties areas can be put together where they need the same type of construction, and we bundle it. That saves taxpayer dollars and saves resources. And that's my plan.
Thank you.
Well, I will say that this is the #1 reason that I am in this race. I have spent my entire career, whether it was on the anchor desk or whether it's the last 20 years that I have spent in the nonprofit world, frankly, really being disturbed by the way this city does business for certain communities and not for other communities. In my work in the foundation, I mean, I've spent so much time in our underserved communities, our neglected communities, frankly, because that's where you have the highest rates of folks who are dying from cancer because they don't have access to so many things. So if there's one reason I am in this race, it is because I want to be that mayor that brings what we need to our communities that have been neglected. That starts with infrastructure. It starts with lights and sidewalks and street lights and all those things that everybody else has already talked about that we promised during consolidation and failed to deliver. We promised those things to the Old South Side. Largely, we delivered to most of the Old South Side, and that parts of the city, but that nobody ever has bothered to do on the Northwest Side. So we've lost so many more businesses on the Northwest Side than we have in other parts of the city, simply because we have not bothered to connect people to the services that are already available. So a lot of this has to do with political will again, and with education. But when I am mayor, we are going to very forcefully and intentionally start to make progress. And again, I'm going to bring up that money that we leave on the table year after year after year. We're going to start funneling that money into the places that we need to. And I'm going to tell you this too. The downtown development piece is important. And it's important not only for downtown, and the fact that we need our businesses to thrive, and that needs to be an area that we can develop business downtown, but that commercial revenue will allow us to invest back into our underserved communities in a way that we wouldn't be able to do without a thriving downtown. So it's important to do both, and we will.
Thank you. Thank you so much for those responses. And Ms. Egan, you can actually hold on to the mic. This is our final question from our partners. So from the Florida Immigrant Coalition, what do you plan to do to ensure the integration and inclusion of immigrant communities, refugees, asylees, and others in Jacksonville?
Well, I will tell you that I come from an immigrant community. My family is Arabic, and we came here, as I said, right after the Great Fire. I remember very well when Tommy was running for mayor. There was a guy that was running against him that made the point that we really needed an all-American mayor. We didn't need this mayor, we needed an all-American mayor. And I think Tommy if y'all remember Tommy very well, he had a very interesting sense of humor. He called him John the Baptist all the way through the rest of the campaign, basically calling attention to the hypocrisy of that comment. But the bottom line is our immigrant communities make us stronger. I have visited so many of our immigrant communities since I've been on this journey, and I just tell you, they love Jacksonville so much. They want to be a part of Jacksonville. One of the things that I'm going to do very intentionally is bring a lot of those folks into our city boards. We have a lot of boards in this city that are very homogenous. And we're going to make them look like Jacksonville, like all of Jacksonville, so that we have everybody's voice brought to bear in the city, and we're going to activate those boards to make sure that those boards actually do what they're supposed to do for all the people of Jacksonville. So I believe that this beautiful mosaic of a city is stronger when we embrace our immigrant community, and I'll continue to lift those immigrant businesses, lift those voices. I think one of the things about having a strong mayor system in Jacksonville is you get to lift people that need to be lifted and highlight those people that need to be highlighted. And that's one of the things I look forward to doing. I think our immigrant community is beautiful and amazing, and I look forward to bringing them more into city government.
Great, thank you. All right, if you could pass that on to Dr. Allen, please.
Well, the old saying that variety is the spice of life. That fits right here with people as well. And I believe that we have some areas that have already, we've got some associations. I think we have an Asian association and Hispanic association. I will bring on board an association, but we also have a very large African community, not African Americans. It's weird when I meet with them. It's like, I don't know the difference between African Americans and Africans who have become Americans. Aren't we the same? As I listen to them talk about their plight, I was like, gee whiz, that's the same plight that we have. So I don't really see the difference. But I tell them all the time, I said, the only difference is actually our accents. But we have a large African community. When I researched to find out what associations we have available, there's nothing beyond the Asian and the Hispanic that I was able to find as I searched. So we have an Indian population. We have so many different, varieties of people that spice up Jacksonville so much, that gives us so much cultural diversity that we can glean from as people, which makes all of us, it broadens all of our horizons, broadens all of who we are, gives us an opportunity to live outside of just our comfort zones. So I will be making sure that I create associations for all of our, or make it available, let me say this, make it available to them, because you can't force people to do anything, but I will make it available for all of our smaller segments of our community to have a city-funded and a city-supported association so that we can hear their concerns. Again, participatory government I'm an expert in participatory government, and that's the only way that people are allowed to participate, is that you identify them, let them know that you are there, let them know what's available to them, and then draw them in, hear their concerns, then deal with those concerns. And so to answer the question, I think the question is, what will I do? That's it. That's what I
do have cultural chambers in this city, as well as many cultural organizations that already exist. And so when we talk about when I talk about what my plans would be as mayor, first of all, we all have to understand that the major role of the mayor is to create a budget. And so therein lies where we can help organizations that already exist. We don't have to recreate the wheel. And so there is, I talk about the budget this way. There's have-to-dos like public safety, and there are the want-to-dos like helping cultural organizations to help their own individuals from their countries assimilate into Jacksonville. That's a discretionary. And then there's the revenue sources. So the revenue sources that we should really dwell on to make sure we get the money into the budget in the first place should be in terms of tourism. I believe tourism will help increase the money and funds in our budget. I call it OPM, other people's money. They come to visit and it goes into our budget. So that's why we need to develop a very vibrant downtown and cultural thing. So people want to stop here on their way to see Mickey or on their way to one of my favorite, and that's NASCAR racing in Daytona. But these, the organizations that exist, that I've really developed relationships with many of them over my career as a legislator, which I'm very proud of, and made a lot of relationships and work for this city in that capacity, is to make sure they have the funding they need for the supplies that they may have to give to individuals that are coming into Jacksonville, for the venues that they have, where they're making sure the applications are coming in to take care of the needs of the people who are coming. And the other thing I would say nationally is that Congress needs to give a pathway to citizenship instead of separating families at the borders and that kind of thing. That's what we really need for the entire country, so that we can be more helpful to those individuals who assimilate into Jacksonville.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the wonderful responses. We are now moving to our questions from our community members, various community members. All right, on to our questions from the community members. This is from Felix Prioria. How will the mayoral candidate address known neighborhood polluters that operate near residents? There's been a study conducted by COJ regarding noxious smells, and I would like to know how the candidate will support the residents affected. And we start with you, Ms. Gibson.
And I didn't hear what did you say at the beginning? I didn't hear it.
How will the mayoral candidates address known neighborhood polluters that operate near residents?
And part of that has really to do with zoning, which is, as mayor, is one of the departments I really want to put my finger and thumb on, because it needs a lot of change. We should not have incompatibility, first of all. What's already there, obviously, we can't just tear it down. And so I was a part of the Manufacturers Association Community Action Group. So I did a lot of tours. Some of the, depending on what it is, like some of it is the fragrant companies. We have a lot of fragrant companies here in Jacksonville. So what I learned, first of all, they use a lot of pine, and it depends on what day, what fragrance they're making that day, and it smells. It's not harmful, but it smells horrible. And so one of my roles was to talk to the community about that. I know that they've been able to reduce some of the odor by changing whatever products they may be using in addition to the pine to make the fragrance that you see in your soap and your detergent is really not fragrance, it's pine that's added to some additives to make it smell differently. So that is I think that's a zoning issue, and I think also that with the city council, let us remember, the city council is the one that makes the ordinances, and we need to push them more. We need to have a conversation about them, including rent control. They can do that if they wanted to. So the idea is to make sure that there's testing of the odors, if it's actually harmful, and make sure that the surrounding community has an awareness of, this is what we're making today, and this is why you may have that odor. That's not harmful, but it smells bad.
Thank you so much. All right, Dr. Allen. How will the mayoral candidate address known neighborhood polluters that operate near residents?
You know, when I graduated from Raines, I actually went away to school before I came back. Later years, I went to JU. The big thing, I was down in Miami, and they used to bother us all the time about, you came from stinky Jacksonville. And I would be coming home up I-95, and you could be asleep on the bus and know when you're reaching Jacksonville, not by seeing the Don't Like Tower at that time, it was by the smell. And I found in talking to some of the residents, not only are they harmful, toxic fumes that are being released into the air, there are people in certain areas, like right off of the Norwood I-95 area back up in there, where it used to be, can I just use the word just plain old funky? You know, it was horrible. I think it was the Glidden paint. It was not Glidden, whatever. Whoever's back there. When I talked to the residents back there, they told me these horror stories of all of the people who were dying or ill from different disorders because all of these things are leaching into the soil. Then out on the west side there, Lane Avenue area, there are other chemical companies that even the workers there are walking away with different kinds of diseases. So I would bring in the EPA and have these areas, these entities checked out. There are rules and regulations that EPA already has in place. And apparently we were not operating within those guidelines. So I'd like to make sure that we are. And I just think that's important, that we recognize what's happening to the citizens of Jacksonville, what's causing it, and stop it. So I would definitely be in, just want to make sure I answer all that, about the smells and everything. I'll make sure that the EPA comes in and does their job. They come in, do their job, make sure that we are in compliance, and then we'll take it from there.
All right, thank you so much. And as we finish up the remaining questions, and we'll change the time to 2 minutes, just to make sure that we get through the community member questions. So I appreciate your support with that. And Dr. Allen, you can keep that mic. And this is from Maria Garcia. The Jacksonville Sheriff's Office receives almost 40% of our city budget, while there have been multiple cases of officer misconduct and criminal behavior in 2022 alone. And JSO detectives solved approximately 29% of those cases. Based on JSO's job performance and management of funds, would you recommend that any potential budget increases to their department be reallocated towards resources that address the root causes of crime?
I don't believe that the police department, I don't think JSO actually needs additional funding. I think they may need to look at how they're using their dollars right now, and there may be a need for reallocation of their dollars within their system to make sure that they have funds going to the areas that are most necessary to serve the people well. Poor job performance, if people are not doing their jobs, they don't need the job. That's why I think that the Citizens Review Board is important, because from that board we can glean what the community is saying. I believe in community policing. I think that they say, well, we don't have enough police officers to put out here and do community policing. If you look into the budget, and it's called rebudgeting, I'm going to do it with the city, with our budget, and I'm going to strongly recommend to the sheriff that he will do the rebudgeting. Rebudgeting is when you go back into your budget at a predetermined time every year and determine whether or not the dollars you have allocated for certain entities or certain functions, whether or not they're producing what the intended outcome was supposed to be. If they are not, then you reallocate those dollars. I'm looking that you go into that budget, find the dollars that, and I'm sure every budget has some, find those dollars, then get the additional police officers that you need so that you can do policing, community policing. I think that is paramount for for job production, job performance, because when you know the people that you are serving, it can cut down on a lot of things. You know, we have mental illness in our communities, you know, on all sides of town. If you are working hand in hand with your community, you recognize that Johnny's not on his meds, so you don't come in with guns blazing. You know that you go to his mom and says, you know, Johnny, even if you have to tase somebody, you don't have to kill him, but you know that he may be acting erratically, but it's because of mental illness and not because of violence.
Thank you.
Thank you. Not only does as mayor, not only does the sheriff, I had to stand up, I'm sorry. Not only does the sheriff have to prove up their budget, every other agency in the city has to prove up their budget too. And then in terms of the sheriff though, and I've said this over and over and over, my degree in criminology helps me to understand the data and theories and why people commit crimes, and I look at trends. And so that's what I'll be looking at with the sheriff as well. I have, at the end of this semester, I have my master's in public administration as well that I've long time trying to get, and I'm excited to get it. And so I want to make sure that the sheriff knows that I need to see data that shows where crime trends are, and I need to see the data that shows why there would be a need for any additional officers based on trends and based on where things are happening. Does that mean we need to add more funding, or does that mean we need to rotate some of our resources in other parts of the city? And so I would take, it's not just a here's what we need and I sign off of it. That's just not who I am. Because ultimately, public safety has to exist in the total community, and different areas have different needs. And so for me, it's a very data-driven process. And also, we all keep talking about community policing. I remember back in the day when officers worked in the communities that they generally grew up in or they knew people in, so the outcomes were better. And I believe we go back to that. We may need less resources in certain communities than more because of the relationship that is already existing with grandma, auntie, cousins. That's what community policing really is, being engaged from the beginning with people that you really knew growing up. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. All right, we'll go to our third question, and this is from Benjamin Allen. What will you do to oppose the nihilistic rhetoric and laws directed by Tallahassee toward the LGBTQ community and transgender people in particular? What are you going to do to prevent Jacksonville from going back to the lavender scare of the 1950s or worse? And we will start with you.
First, I want to make sure we make a clarification about, we keep throwing out in Tallahassee and the legislature, and so let's talk about who it is. If you're a Republican in here today, I apologize to you. Well, I don't apologize to you, but I'm sorry, but it is the Republican-led legislature. We need to clarify that, because I'm a Democrat, and you all know I served you in the legislature, and you know, people want to try to denigrate me for serving. So let's be clear that it's the Republican-led legislature that is creating the habit that we are having in our communities, and particularly towards our LGBTQ community. And it's the governor. So let's make sure when we say Tallahassee, tell it like it is, so people understand who it's coming from. And so in terms of our own community, obviously, you know, we can't control Tallahassee, or we can't control the Republican-led legislature unless we have more Democrats. And when I was the leader, at least got us to 16. So it's important to understand you have to have a certain amount of Democrats in order to procedurally stop some of these things that are happening. And when we have no procedure stoppage for the legislation that's being put forward, there's absolutely nothing that anybody can do in the legislature, and nothing at home except for advocate for HRO ordinances, advocate for compassion, advocate for prosecuting people under hate crime laws when they attack individuals. That's the way I think that we can do that. Obviously, within the budget, if there are entities who need help with issues as it relates to any certain community, that was something I would be looking at. And particularly, you know what we don't do anymore is we don't have Jacksonville days anymore. So we don't bring any of our folks to Tallahassee.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much. And Dr. Allen.
You know, as I said earlier, it's all about people. People are people. Everyone deserves the right to be protected, and you know, the question also talked about the violent attacks against that community. Working with what would I do, working with the Sheriff's Department to make sure, and again, community policing is so important because they are there to help protect, to understand, to know. I believe that sensitivity training and diversity training is necessary among our law enforcement to make sure that they understand, you know, because whatever lifestyle a person has determined to live has nothing to do with their rights to be protected under law. So I will be doing whatever is necessary to make sure that people, regardless to any particular choices that they have made, I believe that they have the right, as I said, to be taken care of. There was something in here that I wanted to address. So the constant attacks against them have led directly to intentionally and unintentionally shutting down books and stuff on the shelves. I don't think the mayor's going to have as mayor, I don't think I'll have a whole lot of say-so on, you know, on library bookshelves and that sort of thing, especially if we're fighting against what's happening with the Republicans in Tallahassee. I'm no party affiliated. My thing is, it's all about equity for all people. So I'd like to make sure that whatever issues arise from whatever community in Jacksonville, I will have Monday with the mayor that you can come in and talk to me as either individually or certain groups coming in. Talk to me, tell me what your issues are so that I can understand what the needs are, and then we can start to use the resources that are available to us to make sure that we address those issues.
Thank you so much. All right, we have two more questions that are from our community members. This one is from Linnell Philman. Once elected, will you agree to hold regular public meetings with community members, especially those that are struggling with high crime and unemployment rates in their area? People with addiction, the homeless, seniors, LGBTQ, and renters affected by the housing crisis. And you may begin, actually. Yes, Dr. Allen, please.
glad you mentioned, I'm glad they mentioned homeless in here, because we tend not to recognize them as citizens, but they're still a part of us. And I have a plan for the citizens who are experiencing the misfortune of being homeless for whatever reason. I want to go into why they're homeless. I have a system in mind to use some of the decommissioned schools to bring them out of the streets and offer a transitional home with a permanent feel. And even in that, people go, how are you going to fund that? You fund it by using some of the people who work there, creating jobs for them, using the expertise that they have, because you'd be amazed at the wealth of knowledge that's walking our streets. Everybody who's on the street is not mentally disturbed. So I will work with that. Struggling with high crime, I believe that economic development is what curtails high crime. You've got to bring high wage paying jobs into areas, and then you don't set them up 30 miles away from where the workforce will be. I believe that we have got to look into making sure that I'll deal with our educational system, both high school and colleges that we have, and trade schools that we have, to make sure we have people who can fill these jobs. Once we go out and bring these high-paying jobs here, we want to make sure that we are equipped to be able to fill the jobs. Otherwise, they're going to bring their people with us, and that creates more competition for my people, us, and that's not what we want to have happen. So I just want to make sure that we have all that we need. We're struggling with high crime, unemployment. When you bring in more jobs, that will address our unemployment. It will also address our criminal activity, and homelessness and seniors. Having that Monday with the mayor, I'll get to talk to all of them. So yes, I will definitely be speaking for our community.
Thank you.
Thank you. There is a lot to unpack in this particular question. And so, one of the things I've always done in my career is that is to have community meetings anyway. And even during COVID or just after COVID, we were having another rash of gun violence and criminality in our communities. I had multiple Zoom, because we have technology now, so we can also include more and more people, and nobody gets left out. Zoom meetings with the sheriff, where people could ask questions of the sheriff, who agreed, not the current sheriff, but the previous sheriff, who was in office at that time, could ask questions of the sheriff in that Zoom meeting and deal with community issues as well. It could be in person and it could be inclusive of Zoom. As a matter of fact, I'm doing Zoom meetings with the community now to hear their ideas. Also, I've gone to many neighborhood meetings, as I mentioned earlier. So the people won't always have to come to me as mayor. I'm good at popping in other people's meetings to chat them up where they are, and I meet them where they are. They don't necessarily have to come to me. And so all of the information that's listed in the question would be covered in my visits or in those visits that would be made to me. Opening up the office of the mayor, opening up the conference room of the mayor, and making sure that I can go to them because their meetings are likely after hours when everybody can come. We have a problem at City Hall where a lot of meetings that people can't come to because they're during the day when they're working. And so I will flip that on its head, and I look forward to doing that.
All right, well, thank you so much. We certainly appreciate this. And actually, that last question was actually combined. We could actually combine that, so it's part of it can certainly be answered, and it was answered, included into that question there. What we'd like to do, if you ladies agree, is that we'd like to offer the mic to maybe 2 or 3 individuals in our audience to ask a question. Just give us an opportunity to have some audience participation, and then we will close out.
Okay.
Do we have anyone that has a question? Okay, hold on just a moment.
Okay.
You're okay? Okay, all right. You're next.
Speak up.
Yeah, I don't know.
That's not a mic.
What's that?
That's a recording mic.
Oh,
You want to use that one?
That's a mic.
Yeah, that'll work.
There we go.
All right, I'm Benjamin Allen, actually, so I want to ask a follow-up to my original question. At CPAC this past week, they were openly calling for the extermination of transgender people.
Extermination.
Yes, they were talking about elimination, otherwise known as genocide. So that's what's on the table right now. That's why I asked the question that I did. The state policies out of Tallahassee, they're Republicans, otherwise known as fascists, because that's what they are, have been putting policies in place actively designed to kill our queer children. To tell me what you plan to do to actively stop our state government from killing our children, because that's what they're trying to do. Thank you.
What I can do as mayor is try to incentivize the citizens, try to, as I said, one of my jobs would be to inspire, to lead, to help, give information. I will research as much as I can to find out what our power actually is, and then give that information so that we can go together and find and come against these sorts of things. You can't just, I can't believe that at any point in our existence in 2023 that we would allow, I don't think it can happen without us allowing it. So we cannot be apathetic as citizens, regardless to whether we belong in the same community or not. We are in the human community, and we are all concerned about it. I will make it known to the entire city that we need to come together and combat this madness that's going on in Tallahassee. And like I said, research and find out exactly what, by law, we can do, because a lot of times when you don't know the law, you don't know you don't know whether or not somebody else is transgressing it. We just let them do what they do. And then years later you find out, oh heck, they didn't even have the right to do that. My job is having voice for and to the people, find out the information, give you the real deal, not some snowed over answer, and then help everybody to do what's necessary.
All right, thank you. All right, Ms. Gibson.
Thank you. You said CPAC. Are you talking about the local CPAC? I don't.
Their national convention.
National Convention of CPAC?
Republican.
Conservative political action.
I thought you were talking about, because we were talking local. I thought you were
Local CPAC is a different thing.
I got that.
My apologies. No, it's part of a Republican strategy over the whole country to kill queer kids through policy. We call it social murder for a reason. All right? I'm also a Jew. I know what this looks like. It looks like the 1930s. So, local government, you have the ability, potentially, to, I don't know, sue the state. I don't know. But you have a certain amount of local power you can utilize. It's not being used. You're not even using your bully pulpit as a party, and I'm finding myself terrified, flabbergasted, and quite frankly enraged. So,
Who's not using the bully pulpit as a party?
the Democratic Party.
And
Okay. Do I have to make policy decisions for the person who wants to be mayor? I can do that, I guess. But look,
let me just address it, because it's going in a wrong direction. That's first and foremost, and I don't want that. The mayor doesn't make policy, the council does. The City of Jacksonville City Council cannot control the legislature. However, I did mention that I believe that we need to reinstitute Jacksonville Days in the legislature to take folks of who are like-minded to address those legislators and the governor in Tallahassee. The City of Jacksonville cannot control the entire state of Florida. It just doesn't happen. That comes from the legislature. The only way we change the legislature is people show up and vote for common sense candidates. The only way we change the Congress is the same way. So the Jacksonville City Council and the mayor does not control Miami, does not control Sarasota, does not control anything but Jacksonville. So we focus only on Jacksonville and what we need to do to make sure we're embracing all communities. We can spread that and talk to other people about that who make laws in other places, but we cannot make laws for other entities. It just doesn't happen. I'm very compassionate, I understand what you're saying, but I'm just giving you the realities of how laws work.
All right, thank you, thank you. All right, we'll go to our next question.
There were 8 people running for mayor, and I see only 3 over here, so that should send a message to all of us. I was just in Tallahassee, and to this gentleman's point, I come back as a mother of 2 black sons scared to death because our state is getting ready to pass legislation to have an open carry permit where everybody can carry guns, don't have to have a background check, and don't have to be trained. That scares the crap out of me. And I worry because all of my kids, as well as myself, went to public schools. And I worry about that universal voucher bill that's probably will pass that will take monies from our public school system. So, and I can kind of go down the list. So my question then is, to his point, how do we can't separate ourselves with what's going on in Tallahassee because it impacts us. I gave 2 examples. How do you align those 2 together? It's one thing for you to say we're Jacksonville, we only deal with Jacksonville, but what goes on in Tallahassee impacts Jacksonville. I just gave 2 examples. So what are you prepared to do as the leader of this community when you are elected to protect us? That's my question.
I think you know the process very well. I think everyone in here knows the process very well. There is nothing we have to talk about. We have to talk about Jacksonville and creating action in Jacksonville. Obviously, we can lobby in Tallahassee, but we don't make laws for the state. That's just a matter of fact. And so as mayor, I would certainly mobilize our community that's what Jacksonville Days is for, that's what other committee weeks are for. Mobilize our community to go and provide testimony in committees, to have meetings with the governor, who is the person that signs legislation. Outside of that, we cannot control every single legislator and every other single community in this state. We can only do what we can for Jacksonville and raise up for Jacksonville. That is all we can do. And we can go to DC collectively and raise our voices there and provide model legislation or testimony against what they're doing. That is how that works, and you know this very, very well. And I know it very, very well too. And maybe some others don't understand that process of what body impacts what body, or what body impacts what portion of the state. Maybe that's a lesson that we can talk about, but that is very important. All we can do is raise our voices as we go and hope we find common sense in state legislators who make state laws. And I want to go back, I don't agree with open carry, but it's not permitless. You still have to go through the process to have the permit. You still have to have a permit. It's just that now you get to wear it on your hip, which is totally crazy. Okay, I'll say it that way.
I think it's very disruptive. We don't live in the Wild Wild West, and for the legislature to do the will of the governor for political purposes, it's just the Republican-led legislature to do the will of the governor for political purposes is just horrible.
Thank you, Ms. Gibson. Ms. Allen?
You did have a lot a lot to unpack in what you said. Remember I said that all politics are local? We can't get away from that. We are responsible for putting people in position, but what we don't do is hold people's feet to the fire. That's done through rallying, going to Tallahassee, doing those sorts of things. And I know that sounds like a skirting or skating around it kind of answer, but we're kind of limited as to what we can actually make happen unless we recognize the importance of our vote. And that's where all of us have a responsibility to talk to all of our friends and families and talk to your foes, talk to everybody about how important it is to vote. I think the open carry is insane, but the way I heard it initially was that you didn't need a permit anymore, which scared the willies out of me. I'm like, that is crazy for real. I mean, because if you take that away, then we are in the Wild Wild West again. So, keeping in mind that all politics are local, we are going to have, and as mayor, my job is to say what I'm saying right now to the masses. You need to vote. This is what's happening. Tell the truth about what was it you put up at 30 seconds. The mayor has to share the truth of the matter with the people. That's my job, to tell you what the real deal is. Like they didn't tell us the real deal with JEA, tell you what the real deal is. Make my recommendation, and then you make your decision on how you want to go forward with it, and I'm with you 100%.
All right, well, thank you so much for our additional questions from our audience. I apologize, we do not have any remaining time. However, again, thank you to our candidates, and we will close out right now. I'll hand this mic over to Maria.
All right, everyone. All right, can we get a hand for the candidates, please? Thank y'all so much. I would really love to thank Myrtle Avenue Brewing for allowing us to host our candidate forum at this wonderful location. So everyone, if you haven't already, get yourself a beer. I think there's barbecue outside too. Make sure we support local businesses here in Jax. I would really like to thank the table partners of the Theory of Change table for helping to put this together. Thank you to Kyle for being our sound and our videographer. Amazing work. And I would just like to encourage everybody to go out and vote. Right now we are in early voting now through March 19th, or you can vote on Election Day on March 21st. So please bring a friend, make an outing out of it. Go get some lunch or come back here and get some beers after you go vote. And then don't forget about our next election. That election day is May 16th. And along with that, everybody always gets a speech about voting. Voting is one tool that we can use to affect change in our community. But we also want to be the people that when one of these people becomes mayor, we want, if something happens that we don't like or we want them to do something, we have to be the people that are showing up in the streets as well. So I encourage you to join an organization. Look up, the Jacksonville Community Action Committee, Northside Coalition. Look up Southern Women Against Gun Violence or Florida Rising, and sign up with them so that we can be ready to mobilize when that time comes. When we can be ready to mobilize in defense of our LGBTQ community who's under attack right now from these fascist people in Tallahassee, and to demand police accountability, and just to demand all the things that we need for our healthy, happy, thriving community. So again, thank you so much for coming out. Thank you to the candidates for coming out, and make sure you go vote.